In a night of combat sports action, there is a lot to digest. Welcome, everyone. My name is Luke Thomas. This is the MMA Fighting, UFC 224, and Bellator 199 post-fight show. Thank you so much for joining me. And here, of course, to help you break down all of the night's action is the gentleman on the other side of your screen, Jed Meshew. Jed, I hope you're doing well. Let's get right to it. Not a moment to waste. We'll start with UFC 224. We'll dig into the prelim card a little bit, and then we'll talk about Bellator 199. If we have a few moments, we might dig in a little thing there about Lomachenko Linares. But for now, let's start with what we saw. A lot to get to with UFC 224. I want to talk about the controversy surrounding the fourth to fifth round a break that they had, where the corner of Raquel Pennington dissuading her from quitting. But just a moment, let's actually talk about the win itself for Amanda Nunes. She gets the fifth round TKO. This fight was really never in jeopardy. It kind of played out, I thought, how we talked about it, which is Pennington is durable. She's a good fighter. She's going to find her moment. She's not going to get blown out. But there was always this consistent distance, right? And I don't mean physically. I mean metaphorically, proverbially, between Amanda Nunes and herself, a gap she could just never cross during the course of that fight. Fair or unfair in my assessment?
Fair. Also, there was a physical distance there too. I mean, Amanda Nunes did a really good job of setting a range where she could fire into Pennington, and Pennington really couldn't do a lot. And that was kind of the story of most of the fight. I think you're right. I think we kind of nailed it. Good for us on our pre-fight determination of how this was going to go. And then, yeah, great for Amanda Nunes. This is her third title defense, so she's racking them up. And I think that now gives her the most finishes of any woman in UFC history. Certainly in the bantamweight division. Either
Yes.
might ties with Ronda.
Ooh, I'm not good with these kinds of things. That's like a Mike Bond, Sean El Shadi kind of thing, but certainly a very decorated champion at this point, right? I know that's sort of a very general way of looking at it, but nevertheless, it's a pretty dominant run that she's on at this point.
Yeah, absolutely.
So this means that Cyborg is likely next, which we can beat and talk about to death. I don't really want to get into that a whole lot. I do want to spend one more note talking about the fight itself. I will say on the good side of things, Amanda Nunes basically in control the whole time. That calf kick early really set the tone, getting takedowns when she needed them. She did get taken down one time, but was able to recapture guard. And her power was there the whole time. Nice clinch. The only thing I thought was, did you feel like her punching was a little bit inaccurate? She was going to that right hand over the top over and over again. And don't get me wrong, she snuck a bunch through, but I thought there were a lot of misses as well.
I think you nailed it with that. I don't know if that was entirely her missing or a lot of Rocky Pennington kind of knew what was happening and was able to dip and slide out of the way in a lot of respects. I don't want to take anything away from Raquel Pennington and her performance because I think she did a lot of good things, but clearly she was just overmatched here. But I'll tell you what, the one thing I noticed was a little bit of inconsistency in Nunes' performance. And this is picking nits. I mean, she won 4 rounds, obviously, but you mentioned the calf kick. She had a lot of success with that early. Really kind of let that fall by the wayside as the fight progressed.
Yep.
She did a lot of good work to the body in that sort of second round, kind of let that go. She did a lot of different things, and all of it worked for her, so, fair play to that. But she kind of let a lot of the success she was having drop away in favor of trying other things, and that maybe she could have stopped that fight a little sooner if she had just kept kicking the legs.
And I have to say, I was very surprised. Maybe I shouldn't be. I know Brazil is having their own share of economic woes. Boy, that arena was empty. And I thought it was, maybe it's my imagination. Vitor Belfort, obviously, for folks who may not know, is or perhaps the biggest star out of Brazilian MMA ever because he was sort of a crossover mainstream star in ways that other fighters weren't. Maybe that's a little bit debatable in the heyday and the peak of Anderson Silva, but I'm fairly certain that's largely true. And so I thought after that fight, maybe it had emptied out a little bit. But apparently some Brazilians on Twitter, for whatever that's worth, were telling me that the ticket prices were just way too high. And it's also sort of proof that we have this impression of Brazil that they'll just eat up anything that the UFC gives them. Maybe not, right? I mean, I don't think it was a disaster necessarily, but it did look noticeably thinned out by that main event time.
I'd be interested to see gate numbers. I was talking to Esther and Casey, who are obviously on location there right now, and they did say that it was a little bit of a thin on the ground feeling in the arena, not nearly as many people. And I am a little surprised by that. We talked, we did this before the event. We determined that, this maybe not a great pay-per-view, but a pretty good regional card, highlighting a lot of Brazilian talent. So that could stick stick for the UFC for a minute. That might hurt.
So let's get to the big story here with the main event. The fourth round is over. Amanda Nunes in total control. Raquel Pennington goes back to her corner, and she tells her corner explicitly, looks them straight to the face and says, I'm done. I'm done. And her corner goes, no, 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 no. Let's change our mindset. Let's go there and throw everything we can to them. Let me just give you my perspective on this, and then I'll pass the baton to you. I mentioned this on Twitter. I mean, you have to think about who fighters are, right? And when you interview them, and as you've done and I've done, you get a real keen sense of it. They're confident about their abilities in ways I've never been confident about anything. They're the most confident people I've ever met in my life. They will profess their strengths. They will totally discard and imagine their life as not having any of those weaknesses. They are irrationally confident about their chances. Probably the hardest thing for a fighter to admit at any point is that they can't do it, that they're done, they don't want it anymore. And when they do that, it is incumbent upon all of us to listen to them. It is outrageous what their corner did. What is your overall take on what happened there?
You have couched it in nicer terms than I can at this point, frankly. The corner's job is to protect the fighter from themselves because, like you said, they don't know where their limits are or where their limits should be. And in this particular instance, Raquel Pennington knew her limits and her corner for whatever reason. And I would absolutely love someone to talk to them and have them explain themselves because this is really an unconscionable thing to send her back out there. And we saw the good it did. Like, I hope that they went back to their hotel room and are like, oh, yeah, that was really dumb of us to do that because we just sent her out there to get murked again for another 2 minutes until she was pouring blood from her face like a faucet. It was terrible. Everyone that was involved in that should have a stern talking to or be fired by Pennington. Really, really bad all around.
And remember, you have to get a license to be a cornerman. I'm not suggesting that their license should be revoked, but some kind of, as you mentioned, some kind of discussion with commission officials needs to happen if they're going to corner somebody else. You don't just have a right to sit in the corner of somebody. That's a role you have to apply to have, and the government has to sanction it. And then, so as a consequence, you have some responsibilities there. And I know what people are going to say. Hey, they didn't know it was going to go out that way of the fourth. They were trying to rally her. Maybe they know their fighter better than we do. I do not presume I do not presume that I know Raquel Pennington better than her corner. Here's what I do know. I know she said to them straight to their face that she didn't want to do it anymore. She has a reputation for being durable. She was down 4 rounds to none. She was clearly battered, clearly bruised. I don't think it takes special knowledge of Raquel Pennington to make an ethical call there. You don't need to know her deepest, darkest secrets or how she reacts in the training room to get a better sense of things. What do you think? Actually, I'll say this, and I wonder what you thought about this. Sometimes you see a big divide between media and fighters. I didn't see that on Twitter and social media, Jed. I saw a lot of fighters speaking out about it.
Everyone I saw was in agreement, and it's because Raquel Pennington said she wanted out. Look, personally, I think her corner should have been the ones telling her, hey, we're done here at the end of the fourth. And that's more what you expect to see is the fighter saying, no, I want to go out there. And honestly, after the fourth round, there was no point in sending her back out there. Even if she came back and said, I'm feeling good, I got this. Like, I wouldn't have been upset if they sent her back out there and she wanted to go because she wasn't getting completely brutalized, but it served no purpose. She was only going to take extra damage at that point. And then as soon as she says no, that's it. Towel's in, we're done. Like that, we're going home. That's okay. There's no shame in admitting defeat when you are beaten.
This is going to be a topic that the MMA world is going to be discussing for a long time. So let's move on now to the co-main event. Jacare Souza losing a very, very narrow split decision to Kelvin Gastelum. This was the fight I thought was the fight of the night. I thought I lived up to it. I'll say that. Sometimes it does. Sometimes it doesn't. You go first on this one, Jed. Your impressions of Kelvin Gastelum and that win over Jacare Souza.
You were right. You said this was the fight of the night going in. I thought it was going to be one-way traffic either way. And for a minute, it looked like I was right. That first round, Jacare kind of had his way. I personally thought he put forward a 10-8 round there. So I scored the fight for Jacare. I don't have any issues you scoring it for Kelvin Gastelum. My impression, really, the biggest thing I take out of this is Kelvin Gastelum has one heck of a chin.
Oh my God. I mean, well, in fairness, so does Raquel Pennington, because that was an incredible beating that she withstood for the most part there. But you're right. Kelvin Gastelum was just, and not only no selling the punches, Fedor can get hit with a shot that doesn't even look all that hard, even in his prime, and he's cut and bruising and bleeding and discolored and the whole nine. It looked, you know what, do you watch Westworld on HBO?
Yes, I haven't seen most of the season, but I know what's going on.
No spoilers. You know the hosts, their bullets when they shoot the guests, they don't work. It felt like Jacare was a host and Gastelum was at Westworld, and he just knew, yeah, the punches are going to land, the bullets are going to make impact, but they're not going to do anything. They didn't do anything to him. They didn't back him up. They didn't slow him down. They didn't change his game plan. But what I will say is, I think you're onto something about the scoring. You could have gone 10-8 in that first round. I don't think that's very controversial. Second round, definitely, I think, is Gastelum's because he dropped him. And that third round, dude, that was really, really, really close. Why do you think in the end the judges gave it to Gastelum?
Personally, I think they gave it to him because Jacare looked beat. The way he carried himself, basically after the first round, when he came out for round two, he already looked kind of tired. And for the rest of the fight, even though he was throwing effective punches and just lamping Gastelum in the face with hard shots, he still looked like he had a harder fight. Didn't want to be there as much as Gastelum, who was fairly spry and springy for the fight. I personally thought Jacare landed the better strikes in the third round, but 6 of one, half dozen of the other, pretty close. And it was really just the way that Gastelum kept coming forward, looked like he was doing better, and Jacare did not.
The last thing about this for the co-main event, Jacare, you never know. You can never say never, but that might be it for him in terms of an opportunity to fight for a UFC title. I guess we'll just have to see. But Gastelum now putting himself absolutely in the driver's seat on this one. But the interesting part about it is people were getting bitter at me because I guess I didn't explain it well, although I did note it was like this is an unfair measurement. If you take out the Uriah Hall fight, you look at the rest of his fights, Kelvin Gastelum's at middleweight, so you have Marquardt, Kennedy, Belfort, all that ended up being a no contest, Bisping, and now Jacare. All those wins are against guys over the age of 35, and folks were saying, well, yeah, so what? You're saying they're bad fighters? No, quite the opposite. Now, Marquardt was at the end of his run there, and Michael Bisping was inopportune time in his career. But this is actually, I still think he's probably better suited, Jed, to be a welterweight, but this is actually the good thing you want to see in division. You want to see the youth push out sort of the more senior members, and you're getting that. Do you think that there's any chance he doesn't fight for a title after this at middleweight?
The only chance is if Yoel Romero upsets Robert Whittaker when they rematch, they're going to just do a trilogy immediately off that. Otherwise, I think you're going to get Robert Whittaker versus Kelvin Gastelum sometime early next year, and it'll be a good fight. So, something to look forward to.
And two guys in their 20s. That's what I'm looking for here. So I guess we'll have to wait and see what happens there. Then we move now to...
And actually, interesting, two guys who were former welterweights. So maybe this idea of cutting weight is a little less important than everyone in the sport seems to think it is.
Fair point. Speaking of cutting weight, that takes us to Mackenzie Dern. Coming
Beautiful
in.
segue.
You are a pro at this, my friend. She comes in, of course, we know the story, 7 pounds over, facing Amanda Cooper. She beats her, I want to get this right, 227 of the very first round. Dude, it was academic. Hits her with the right hand and dropped her. I'll go to you first again on this one. Your takeaway. What's the big takeaway from Dern's win over Cooper?
I took away nothing from this. This was, she landed the big overhand right, which I guess is an improvement over the striking we've seen from her, but not even really a ton of it. She's a willing striker. She just hasn't become very good at it. And that still wasn't a great punch. The punch itself was great. The setup, everything behind it. It's not like she was Anderson Silva out there. She threw a good punch. She landed it. And as soon as it hit the mat, the fight was over. I think individual Mackenzie Dern performances at this stage of her career, since it's so early, aren't going to tell us a lot about her. It's just going to be kind of the balance over the course of a couple of years, and we see how she develops.
Yeah, I had some folks saying, well, maybe leaving John Crouch's gym was no big deal. Well, maybe it was. I don't know. I mean, these are all things where we're getting a bit of an unusual feel to them all. But in beating Amanda Cooper, I don't know. I think you're right. I don't know really what it tells us. Amanda Cooper, she was trying to connect off the counter, and she was never moving her head to set herself up for a position, and that overhand right was landing over and over and over again in the course of that very short fight. Then finally, it really connected and dropped her. And then, of course, by that point, it's a de facto takedown, right? So, who cares at that? It just wasn't. It's fine that it wasn't a particularly stern test because she still needs a fair bit of development. But it's also not very helpful in understanding exactly who she is. Now, she mentioned this, which I thought was interesting, Jed, that she was looking to take maybe some time off, 4 fights in 7 months. I think maybe retooling a little bit is probably in her best interest. Plus, she has got to get her weight management issues set before the next fight.
I think taking time off is usually fine. In this respect, if they're going to keep pushing her up the ladder, then yeah, take some time off because she doesn't need to climb to the next rung. If they're just going to give her more Amanda Coopers, and no disrespect to Amanda Cooper, she's wildly outmatched, and that's just a training exercise for Mackenzie Dern. And I think getting her live rounds is fine if they want to do that, but if they are going to try and move her up the 115 and 125 ladder, taking time off, working with her new team, especially since she's new to the team, will probably do well for her and maybe give her the opportunity to figure out, hey, I'm just going to move to 125. I'll put on a little bit of weight, and this will be easier because I can watch Kelvin Gastelum have success a weight above what we might think is natural for him, and I can do the same.
Do you think the fans will forgive her, given how whatever it's supposed to mean and whatever it should mean? Hold on. Whatever it does mean, do you think the fans will forgive her, given how dominant her victory is?
Of course. Come on, they don't. The fans don't even remember now that this is all water under the bridge. She is a star of her own making in such ways that she is, and that's not really going to change unless she misses weight 8 times in a row.
Then that takes us to the fight you had pegged as fight of the night. Still a very good one with an incredible finish. John Linacre defeating Brian Kelleher. Again, I'll get this right, 3:43 of the third round. I thought Kelleher fought ably. It's just in the end, Linacre's got too much power.
That's it. Like, there's not a ton left to say about it. Kelleher did a good job of sticking in there, hanging tough, doing a lot of the things that Raquel Pennington did, as just being like, way to go, man. You are awesome, and I don't want to be you. But at the end, he suffered a worse fate than Raquel Pennington. That was a monstrous left hook. Just unbelievable stuff from John Linacre.
That Linacre currently sits at 6. Ahead of him is Marlon Moraes, Jimmy Rivera, Rafael Assunção, Dominic Cruz, and Cody Garbrandt. Play matchmaker. Who does Linacre fight next?
I don't even know who's booked or not. Put him against Rafael Assunção. Is Assunção booked? He's probably not because they hate him and probably booked him against somebody who's not ranked because they don't want him near the title picture. But frankly, Lineker's not super close to a title shot, so have the two of them fight, and that'll be okay because, man, when you just read that list off, 135 is banging right now.
Mm-hmm. All the guys can either wrestle or strike or wrestle, strike, and do jiu-jitsu a little bit too. Like, they've all got at least 2 of the 3 parts of the game on lock. I don't think Rafael Assunção has a fight coming up, although Marlon Moraes and Jimmy Rivera do. Cruz also, I think, is open, but still maybe in healing mode. And, of course, TJ Dillashaw and Cody Garbrandt have unfinished business in August. So we'll see how that goes. Opening the main card, Lyoto Machida defeating Vitor Belfort at 1 minute of the second round. Somebody tweeted me this. I forget who it was, so forgive me if I'm not properly citing it. But it was Lyoto Machida is the only fighter to have 2 KO wins via front kick. Randy Couture and now Vitor Belfort. And Vitor Belfort is the only fighter to have 2 losses via KO from front kick. Anderson Silva and now Lyoto Machida. Your takeaway from this contest?
One from each leg, too. Anderson hit him with the right leg stepping in, and it was just a straight front kick from Lyoto's left. Incredible. Like, super fun. I do hope Vitor actually sticks with the not coming back to fight again. He goes out. I know that's not an optimal way for him to go out, but that was way more – like, the fight itself was kind of bad up until that point, a lot of not happening, but the ending was awesome, so it's all okay.
I know this is a loaded term, so I'm going to use it in a loaded way, but I heard people saying it. I would like to get your reaction. They said Lyoto Machida is back. Is he back?
I knew that was exactly what you were about to say. No, he's not back. He knocked out a guy who has been fighting for 21 years. Like, he can still get wins in the division over super raw guys or super old guys, but as you mentioned earlier with Gastelum's run, middleweight happens to be a division populated by really old people at the top of it. So he can keep picking up highly ranked wins and maybe even sneak his way to a title shot, which would just be the darndest thing. But no, he's not back at all. If you put him in against one of the like younger guys who's really good, if you put him in against Kelvin Gastelum, or if you, God forbid, Robert Whitaker, bad things are going to happen to him.
And by the way, he's sitting currently at 12, Vitor Belfort at 9, Brad Tavares at 10, and Uriah Hall at 11. There's a chance he might sneak into the top 10 here. So I'll say this, certainly long in the tooth, I think, 40 years old, and they put him on the shelf for basically taking melatonin, the athletic equivalent of it anyway. And yet, nevertheless, he's out here getting the kinds of wins that can put him back into some interesting spots. So we'll see what happens for him. Anything on the prelim card that captured your attention?
Come on. Do we have to ask?
Yes, I have to ask.
I mentioned it in the pre-show, and it came to fruition. Are you kidding me? Alexei Oleinik hits another Ezekiel choke, pulls guard, and Ezekiel's from bottom half. He is the best.
He really is. Let me just say this: when I do my Monday Morning Analyst podcast, one of the reasons why I do it is I want to celebrate fighters who do really well, because I'm very hesitant to be like, well, you did that wrong and that's terrible. And some of that is inevitable. Like, you can't praise somebody for doing something good without also critiquing the bad. But here's my question. You know Oleinik does this if you're going to fight him. It's maybe the only thing he can do at this point. He doesn't move like my wife was watching Black Panther tonight. It's not exactly how he's not T'Challa out there, right? Okay. So he wraps up here when they're standing, and then just pulls the Albini on top of him. If you're Albini, how did you not know that was coming? And number two, how are you not hand fighting? It was like a shocking level of poor preparation, no?
Look, it's an Ezekiel choke in MMA. They don't happen in the gi, much less in an actual fist fight. Like, there's no excuse. Like, getting omoplata, there's no excuse. Like, it just shouldn't happen in high-level MMA. But you're not going to rain on my parade, Luke. It's awesome, and I'm here for Alexei Oleinik. I'm here for him.
Your enthusiasm is palpable. A couple other notes there. Jack Hermanson over Talos Leitchis appeared to be like tore rib cartilage or maybe broke a rib and then just gutted through and found a way to win. Incredible moment there. He was nearly submitted and he found a way to hang on. And the one bout I was looking forward to, Davy Hamos versus Nick Hine, he got the rear naked choke. How about him locking up the Kimura grip from half guard, sliding out all the way past him, and then using that space to then ricochet back in and take the back? Was that not pretty sweet?
I'm going to assume that's your Monday Morning Analyst right there, because that whole back sequence was incredible. But, like, I'll be honest, I'll throw you an olive branch here. That was better grappling than Alexei Oleinik, even if it still didn't hit my heartstrings as well.
Not many things than a 40-year-old plus man hitting his 75,000th Ezekiel choke in MMA can, but nevertheless, I certainly grant you that. So a pretty interesting card in Brazil. Had some ups, had some downs. A little bit light in attendance there, as we noted, but I wanted to get to Bellator 199 as well. Now, you watched the entirety of that event, so I'm going to pull up my notes here as well. The Bellator 199 card, this took place at the SAP Center in San Jose, California, which is a nice venue. Your main event, Ryan Bader beating Muhammad Lawal in 15 seconds. I saw it, man. He just kind of faded one way. I think it was a feint, and you saw Lawal drop his right. He went right back to it and hit him with the left, and that's all she wrote. What is there really to say about this fight, Jed?
Nothing at all. It was way over much quicker than anyone thought it was going to happen. Ryan Bader hits really hard. We've known that since he came out of The Ultimate Fighter. He's also probably going to win this whole tournament. But honestly, the biggest takeaway I have from this is that he is getting a much harder draw than the other end of the bracket. Fedor had to fight Frank Mir, and now he's going to fight Chael, and the winner of that is going to fight the winner of Mitrione and Bader, who are the two favorites of the tournament. So functionally, your Bellator Heavyweight Grand Prix winner will be the semifinal bout between Bader and Mitrione, I think. But yeah, nothing much to say about this particular fight except for good for Ryan Bader. He's still a really elite light heavyweight, and the UFC shouldn't have cut him.
King Mo saying on social media he's dropping to middleweight. Good call, bad call?
It kind of plays against his entire money weight thing, but yes, he should have been a middleweight the whole time. He would find that considerably easier for him to be navigating the MMA waters now.
So we'll see what happens with that. Your co-main event, John Fitch defeating Paul Daly 30-27, 2 30-26s. Paul Daly literally booing himself the fight in Bellator while he was getting mounted in that third round. This was, I think, as much as you could expect from it, and at the same time, also still weird.
One, I don't think he was booing himself at all. I think he was booing Bellator and John Fitch. I'm pretty confident, knowing a little bit about Paul Daly, that he was not on the end of his own boos. But yeah, it was. Look, thank you, Paul Daly, for doing that, because other than that, this fight was really awful to watch. It killed the momentum of the card. You know, the Bellator main card honestly was great. You had 3 first-round knockouts, and Adam Piccolotti, we're going to get to him in a second, had a great performance as an underdog and getting a win right at the end. And this kind of just sunk all the air out of the balloon. At the end of the first, Daly had a moment where it looked like maybe he could knock out Fitch, but he didn't, and then Fitch Fitched him. So it was fun and interesting for at least to see that happen and hear Mauro Ranallo try and navigate that live.
Since the loss to Husamor Palhares in 2014, he's beaten Yushin Okami, this is John Fitch, Yushin Okami, João Zeferino, who's a very good fighter, Jake Shields, Brian Foster, and now Paul Daly, which is kind of interesting. But the bigger question, of course, is about Paul Daly. Do you think he re-signs with Bellator?
No, I think he's done with that. I feel like you probably don't boo Bellator when you're up against the cage and say things like, wow, way to go, Bellator, this is going to win new fans. He has an acrimonious relationship with them there. I think he's an exciting enough fighter. Somebody else will be willing to pay him money, and he'll probably take out from this.
Aaron Pico defeating Lee Morrison. My God. This is, I think, the second time he's dropped a fighter in his very short career with body punches.
Back to back.
I know. You know what? I was there at his NYC debut, and it didn't go as planned. But this guy was 18-8, the record he had. It was not the best fighter, but it was an experienced one. And he looked like he didn't want any part of Aaron Pico, not merely from the body shot, but he looked... he was confused and nervous ahead of time. How about this? We said we couldn't read too much into the Amanda Cooper loss to Mackenzie Dern, or conversely, the Mackenzie Dern win. Can you read something into this Aaron Pico victory?
I'm going to sound like a hypocrite and say yes. Yes, you can. Look, at this point, at 20, 21, I don't actually remember how old he is. Aaron Pico is already one of the absolute best body punchers in MMA, which is insane because I know he has a Golden Gloves background as a child, but think about who he is. He came this close to making the U.S. Olympic wrestling team, and he is just icing dudes with rib roasters like this. He's LeBron. I made this analogy to a friend of mine earlier tonight as I was trying to show this fight, like, watch this guy. He's LeBron James. Like, he is the closest thing this sport has to cannot miss. Like, he's going to be an incredible fighter.
And, of course, his takedown defense was there as well, which came as no surprise. I'll be looking forward to seeing more from him. Czech Congo defeating Javy Ayala. I know you spoke to Ayala in the days leading up to this contest. And, by the way, he got it in the first round via KO. Unbelievable, right? When was the last time that happened for Czech Congo? It's been quite some time.
2014.
Jesus, that long? My God.
That long.
What happened here?
Czech Congo just killed him. Like, Ayala was pressing the action, clearly trying to take up the space, and Congo hit him with a real short Czech right hook, and that was the end. He dropped like a sack of bricks. That's what I'm saying. Like, Bellator was a really fun card outside of the Fitch Daily tonight. If you didn't watch it, go check it back, because 3 first-round KOs is pretty great.
Yeah, off an event where they had, 4 of them in the first round,
yeah.
Right? Pretty incredible streak of luck for them. And by the way, I think this moves Czech Congo into the position as the official alternate for the heavyweight Grand Prix.
It does not.
It does not. No, that's right. It's the Nelson Krokop fight, right?
Exactly. Even though Nelson already got bounced out of the tournament.
That's right. How
so
can I do it?
He gets a wrestle back if you beat Smirko.
That's hilarious. All right, and then opening up the show, Adam Piccolotti taking on Carrington Banks at 441 at the third round. He gets a submission. Piccolotti does. You know, Piccolotti's a guy out of, a.k.a. a lot of folks don't know, black belt, good wrestler. He had a bit of a rough run there, but this was a nice comeback win for him. Carrington Banks is a talented guy and tried to wrestle with him, and I thought Piccolotti was going to have some trouble. Initial trouble early on, but very impressive rebound performance for the AKA product.
Wildly impressive stuff. I mean, Piccolotti was a fairly big underdog coming into this. You're right. He struggled at the beginning of the first round with the grappling. He clearly figured out something. I wasn't watching close enough to tell what happened in there, but he adjusted to the grappling of Banks pretty fast after the first little bit of struggles, and after that it was one-way traffic, man. He kept getting to the back, kept controlling, kept fishing for arm bars and rear naked chokes, and finally, he willed himself to a victory. 20 seconds left, he finally just got under the chin, got the tap out, didn't go to the cards, even though he was clearly up. So great performance from him.
And he also had one sequence where he, he was underneath, went for the arm bar, moved to his base, hooked the back leg, spun it, turned. Banks tried to get away, and then he took Banks's back. So he went from being underneath to Banks's back in a matter of like a second or two. It was an unbelievable scramble. So please check that out when you get a chance. Before we wind the evening down, young Jed Meshew, there was one more bout. We'll do it very quickly. It was not MMA, which we normally would not even talk about, but it was kind of special. Vasily Lomachenko taking on Jorge Linares on ESPN. What an incredible contest this was. I'll pitch it to you first. Anything that you think is worth mentioning for our MMA audience about what Lomachenko did tonight?
Look, we're going to always talk about Vasily Lomachenko because he's the best combat sport athlete on the planet. I will die on that hill. He's incredible. He's the best pound-for-pound boxer. And, this was not an easy fight for him. He got dropped, came back, and we talked about Aaron Pico's rib roasters. He absolutely leveled Linares with a left hook to the body. Just if you like fighting, it doesn't matter if you don't like boxing. If you like fighting at all, if you like MMA, you're going to like Vasily Lomachenko. I promise you that.
The only thing I would say about it is, this is how you make a star. We'll see how big he ultimately gets. His first bout on ESPN, the guy quits on the stool. I believe he quit on the stool. He certainly quit. And then in the second bout, which was against Rigondeaux, a two-time Olympic medalist like him, he quits. So you got this incredible amateur career, near perfect out through 400 fights. He gets 2 gold medals. He gets on ESPN. First guy retires. He faces another guy like himself, makes that guy retire, and then he goes up in weight class. Fastest guy in boxing history to get 3 world titles in 3 different weight classes, and makes that guy not quit exactly, but not able to continue from a body punch. It's like, this is a promoter's dream. This is what you want if you're Dana White, if you're Bob Arum, if you're Oscar De La Hoya, who was in attendance, of course, because he promotes Linares. This is just like everything you would want out of somebody. I'm waiting for somebody in MMA to come along and wow us like that.
The thing is, it's not just that he's doing these things too. In this fight, didn't really happen, but in the other ones you mentioned, in the Rigondeaux fight, he's showboating out there. He's prime Roy Jones Jr. and he is messing with fighters, and fans love that. Like, everyone loves that the Diaz brothers talk trash in the middle of a cage fight. It's Vasily Lomachenko is, if he's not a star, something is wrong with the world.
Last question. In MMA tonight, who was the biggest winner?
Ooh, that's a really good question, actually. I'm going to say Kelvin Gastelum because he's got himself a middleweight title shot. That seems like everything else felt a little more like it was going to happen, a certainty, whereas that was not. And now he's suddenly, he had struggles at welterweight, and now he's on the verge of a title shot.
I would certainly agree with that. Great analysis, Jed. I know it's late, so let's do this. Let's call it a day. A big day in combat sports, from boxing to mixed martial arts. We gave you all of that, but stick around. There'll be the MMA Hour on Monday. I'll have my Monday morning analyst, the live chat. MMA Fighting will continue with the content. So for Jed, I'm Luke. Thank you guys so much for watching. Give the video a like and subscribe to the channel below, and we'll see you on the next fight night. Take care, everyone.